next point, we discussed the article of Afghan Analyst Network written by, we discussed the report by Kate Clark. There is another article. I think it was published today. So I strongly recommend people to also read that report. It's about political appointments by Ashraf Ghani. In this article, basically, the Afghan Analyst Network, they're very, obviously, they have very highly skilled analysts over there. They are discussing how Ashraf Ghani is appointing people, to a certain degree, people who are obviously qualified, like Ajmal Ahmadi. This guy has 2 master's degrees from Harvard University. He doesn't speak.
Yeah, he's clearly not unintelligent. Like that's one thing. But he doesn't. He's not really. Doesn't seem to be well attuned to local dynamic.
Yes, he's Farsi and Pashto is like really, really shabby. Okay, fine, but this guy has 2 master's degrees and he's very highly educated. Similarly, there are a lot of other figures who have been appointed by Ashraf Ghani who are very highly educated, okay? He has appointed many young women into different positions in the security apparatus, in all different fields of government. Some of them are very educated, they have very impressive resumes, but they're all very young, okay? They don't have any experience. So the article on Afghan Analyst Network, basically to summarize it, I'm not going to attempt to summarize it, but just to let you know, they are explaining how you have political appointees by Ashraf Ghani. He's appointing people who are obviously educated and they have the skills to work in a certain field, but then there are these political appointees who have a very symbolic role, you know? And this...
Who do you have in mind?
You read the article, they're not really being specific, but they're describing the problem, which is very important at this particular stage in our current situation, because this is a point that I tried to raise earlier on Twitter a few months ago. I fully appreciate the fact that young Afghans, people who have studied abroad, that they are brought into the system and they are given jobs and they can serve their country. I wish I had that opportunity as well. But then there is another issue, is that simply because you have a degree from Leiden University, like I do, or from Brunel University, like you do, or some other university, it doesn't mean that we are the most suitable people to perform in certain jobs in Afghanistan. You sometimes need to actually appoint someone who is in Afghanistan, who may not have a very impressive degree, but they have experience, they know the society, its problems, much, much better than people who have spent years outside. This is a simple fact. And aside from this point, there is another issue, this is my personal observation. And my personal observation is that Ashraf Ghani is increasingly appointing women to very high positions, not because they are the most qualified and most suitable candidates for those roles, but because he wants to show international community, look, I am such a great leader. I am giving all these women all these impressive new titles. So you need to support me. You need to support my government, and you need to continue donating money because I am a champion of women's rights.
This reminds me, obviously, before anyone comes for me, I'm not saying that Ashraf Ghani and Bashar al-Assad are the same thing. But it reminds me of the Syrian civil war, where the Assad, everyone is ISIS, but Assad, he likes alcohol and he likes to party, and we've got clubs and whatever. And then you mention, well, actually, if Bashar al-Assad was a women's rights, if he was pro women's rights, his militia would not be raping women as a matter of strategy and tactic, as they do. The rape of women institutionalized as an instrument of war, mass rape. This isn't something that someone who cares about women's rights does. So there are many other, and the sad thing is that a lot of people in the international community will take the bait. They will fall for these superficial demonstrations of solidarity with women's rights or whatever, and ignore the bigger picture, which is that women in Afghanistan form part of the society of Afghanistan. And the society of Afghanistan is suffering and has been suffering for over 4 decades. And Ashraf Ghani's role in that is undeniable.
The thing is, like, for instance, recently he appointed a woman as a minister. By the way, most of these ministers and appointees in Ashraf Ghani's government, they have not been approved by the Afghan parliament. So they are all acting ministers. It means that they are not fully legitimate. They need to be approved by the parliament. They don't get the approval. Even before they are presented to parliament, he replaces these ministers with someone else. So he's continuing the scheme of having all these ministers appointed without approval of the parliament, and when after 2 or 3 months, then he replaces them with someone else. It's not very democratic, people say we have to defend this government because it's democratic and it's this and that, but that's not very democratic when you try to scheme the whole system. But anyways, that's beside my point. What I'm trying to say is he has appointed Rangina Hamidi, is an Afghan woman who has studied in United States. She spent most of her life in United States, and she has a private school for these elitist snobs in Kandahar. This private school is entirely according to the American system of education. All the courses, everything is in English, which is brilliant, fantastic, very good job. But this poor woman, who when she was on television, she couldn't properly speak Pashto or Farsi. She was very, not very eloquent. And she admitted, yes, I spent most of my life in America. I didn't study Pashto and Dari, so that's why I'm not very eloquent in my own native languages. And now she is appointed as a minister. Okay? This creates a lot of distrust in Afghanistan. People 100%, see this
100%. If you go on the Taliban's like Twitter handles, or if you go on the sort of the propaganda accounts and whatever, one of the taunts that they highlight the government is Fulbright Tehran. Okay?
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, they're referring to Fulbright scholars, right, highly educated in the West, and these Americans and their Fulbright are lackeys here ruling on our behalf. So, and this kind of angle actually is something that a lot of Afghans feel. A lot of Afghans do feel that yes, while someone may doesn't necessarily have blonde hair and blue eyes, is not American, has an Afghan or a Muslim name, but they don't feel that the people in government are correctly representing their cultural aspirations. And not only that, they can't, there's a literal gap in communication. There's a wall in communication because government cannot, many people in government, many of these senior people that are called Fulbright Tehran, they can't really speak in Pashto or in Dari.
It's not just a matter of language, it's also culture and values. Like, for instance, I've spent most of my life outside of Afghanistan. So when I am in Afghanistan, or when I'm around people who have just come from Afghanistan, I am often reminded of the fact that, when I sit and work and move around non-Muslims in a Western society, it's different. It's different. I'm aware of that, and obviously I'm also a expert on cross-cultural communication because I speak multiple languages. I work as a translator. Yeah, so I'm constantly aware of the fact that people have different cultures, they have different values, and sometimes even if you know the other person's language, there are certain nuances that you need to be aware of when you're trying to make a point, when you're trying to explain something. So you go against certain values and principles in a different culture. And if you're not aware of that, especially when you're dealing with people from other countries, with immigrants, with refugees, or with expats, people who come here for just a few while to work, you need to be aware of these differences so that people can operate and function in a certain environment, and that there is no conflict and that there is no tension, and everyone feels safe and welcomed and respected. But when we see the current government in Afghanistan, like the way some of these political appointees by Ashraf Ghani, the way they behave, the way they talk, the way they articulate themselves, the way they reason, even when the press asks them questions, how they respond, you just see that these people are living in a bubble. And what's even funny is, like, we have this guy, Ajmal Ahmadi, who has a very impressive resume. This guy is very highly educated, but he keeps blocking everyone on Twitter.
Yeah,
Friend
I've
and
noticed
foe.
that.
You
I've
have to
noticed that.
even if you have a very, very mild and very innocent comment, he will block you right away. Like, it's just so petty,
I mean,
it's
I
really
guess
pathetic.
the thing is that people live in their echo chambers. But moving, like, it's going before Ajmal Ahmadi, I actually remember the funny story here. You're right. Now in Kandahar, for those people that are not aware, what we know was the thumbs up in the West, sort of as a sign of goodwill, is actually a swear word in Kandahar.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm not gonna go
People
on the
know,
podcast.
people understand.
I'm not gonna explain what exactly it is or where it came from, but it's a swear word. So the popular story is that when the Americans first invaded Afghanistan, they go to Kandahar. They see a lot of villagers going like this with their thumbs up. And the Americans are like, this is excellent. Like, we're going to the villages, and so the Americans, naturally, the nice thing to do is to do it back.
Yeah.
to put the thumbs up back, and it just shows you culture. The villagers probably thought, wow, these guys learned how to swear just like us. Whereas the Americans are delighted, thinking, wow, we went to these villages and, these people are out there greeting us in our own sort of cultural, non-verbal communication model. So, yeah, culture matters. Language matters. Gestures matter. Mannerisms matter. So when Ashraf Ghani's government and all of these very highly educated Western diaspora Afghans go back, and there is a very visible gap between just in the tone of speech and the mannerisms. It further entrenches that sense of alienation from the government that we discussed earlier.
Exactly.